Good evening and welcome to the Stranger Tribe Live. My name is Anthony Krzyzewicz, and tonight I am so happy to have an evening with Mr. Ben Brown. And listen, this is something that's never happened on the show today. It is Tuesday. It is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, or no, Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday here. I'm all messed up, but it's Thursday by you, isn't it?
Yeah, Thursday morning, 11 a.m.
I can't I can't literally wrap my head around that. Like, I understand it's real and things like that happen, but it's interesting. Like, when we were trying to figure out, first of all, I felt like we were mathematicians trying to figure out like the right time to do this and have to like calculate it and stuff. But dude, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm really excited to learn about like how you became an artist and your history, and you know how I found out about you and everything. But I really want to start off with, let's roll it back a little bit to the beginning. When did you realize that you wanted to become an artist of any sort?
Hey, Anthony, thanks for having me. I'd always drawn since I was a little kid. My dad was like an amateur sort of painter. He was an accountant, but he was a reasonable painter, and I had a great grandfather that his sketchbook was always around the house. So I'd always drawn and enjoyed drawing, and I used to sort of just park myself in the front of the TV next to the hi-fi with my headphones on and just sit there and doodle.
So was the combination of like music and art something that was in early stages of the development of you becoming an artist?
I think so, because as a kid, I even loved the pop culture of rock bands and, poring over the sort of sleeves and liner notes and things. I had an older brother that was 5 years older than me, so he was a good gateway into, a lot of the stuff that I loved when I was really young, like Hendrix and Suzi Quatro and things like that. So, yeah.
So when did, in your development as you moved along and progressed in life, when was the point when you realized that you had something that you could potentially do? I mean, because even like over your right shoulder, I mean, your artwork 100% speaks for itself on the talent that you have and the ability that you have. When was that you realized that, hey, I got something here and I can really utilize this on a commercial level more than just, as a hobby?
When I was young, same sort of age, my father was an accountant, but he worked in the magazine trade back when there were magazines. and, And he used to take me into work, and I'd go and see the art department, when I was 10 years old, and they'd give me their old pens. And I was just amazed that these guys could sit there and draw all day, and that was their job. And I think at that early age, I really loved the idea of a professional artist, that was a vocation and a job, more so than I never. I guess I have a bit over the years, but I've probably leaned more that way rather than tapping into the idea of, commentary on society or a struggling artist, edgy person persona. I always loved the idea that this was a job you could do, and if you played your cards right, you could do that instead of digging holes or running around in a suit all day.
Yeah, yeah. I never understood the intrigue of wanting to wear a suit for a living. I mean, I know people got to do it, but
Yeah,
it's very choking. Can never do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So your dad worked in the magazine industry back then, which, like you said, I mean, the industry is unfortunately just not around nearly as much as it is anymore.
yeah.
I think it's interesting to me because I'm a big fan of like Mad Magazine, which is silly, because I remember growing up and really being like, really enamored by the art and like how they portrayed certain characters in development. But it was always interesting to like go get that magazine and read it. So art in the magazine world to me when I was younger, is something that really was kind of mixed together.
Absolutely.
It's funny. I still have a monthly subscription to Mad Magazine. I've had it for about 6 years.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of the few people, but
I think, is it still on the stands in the States? Is it?
it is. So the way that Mad Magazine worked is they're not developing full magazines of 100% brand new material. The way that it is now is they're having artists 100% redo covers. So they'll have
Yeah.
brand new covers and they'll have a couple of snippets of new developments inside of it. But what the cool thing they've been doing is they've been going back to their archives of things they developed, like back in the 80s or even the 90s, and they'll find how that was relevant then and kind of turn it into like, look how what was going on in society then is going on now, and showing it like it's this weird like world of how everything kind of recycles itself.
Runs in loops.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's crazy. But no, it's sad. I mean, like the other like it was about a couple weeks ago, like, hey, do you want to renew your subscription for $30 for a year? I'm like, just go right ahead. I mean, I
Yeah.
like getting
Yeah.
it in the mail.
It was a huge influence on me. And out here, they had for a long time, there was an Australian version that was about 70% of the US version, and then they'd add 30% Australian to it. And I used to do a lot of work for them and did a couple of covers for, like, I did a Spy vs. Spy cover and a
Really,
Tony Hawk cover. Yeah, it was great.
dude. First of all, I had no idea that you did that. That's just kind of crazy how things tie in.
Yeah.
But it's always like those things were art back then. It's kind of like, those magazines are similar to like the idea of like vinyl and CDs and media or multimedia of any sort that you can hold, and it gives you the ability to feel like you own it, right? Like it's something that's yours. Like I
Mm.
can never get into the idea of like reading books or magazines on an iPad. It just didn't feel right to me. I tried it, didn't work. It was always great because like back in the 90s, there were so many different versions of magazines, like Cracked Magazine. I remember that one, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all these different ones, but I love the art. Like I love when they goof on a movie that just came out. Like I'm God, the overdone versions of like Keanu Reeves on a cover from a movie. I remember like the Matrix cover from Mad Magazine in the late 90s, and it was just like this most ridiculous
Yeah.
overdone version of Keanu Reeves, but it was awesome.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I mean, I was reading Mad in the 70s, so, but I used to even, probably later when I was working for them, I'd go back and find, like the original artists and like Wallace Wood and people like that. Just amazing. Had a huge influence on the way I draw. And yeah, to me, I've always thought when I was quite young, the great art of the 20th century is things like Warner Brothers cartoons, Mad Magazine, the Beatles, things that everyone had and everyone loved. It's another thing about art is, to me, it's quite an elitist sort of intellectual pursuit for a lot of people. You know, I love the trash and the rubbish of it all. Like, I don't really subscribe to the idea that, you know, state-funded artists can create. Yeah, I do subscribe to the idea. Don't get me wrong. I do love that, and I think there's definitely a place for it. But for me personally, it's always been the shit that I watch on TV, just the rubbish, you know, that comes into your life through pop culture, and that's what everyone else sees and everyone relates to. You know, like my age group, I was born in the '60s, and there's, you know, everyone pretty much lives through quotes of, you know, The Simpsons, because that was such a big influence from when it began through to probably halfway through its current life cycle. But, you know, that again had such a massive influence on, you know, people that see it and love it.
It really is. It's interesting how, like you were saying, how like you because there's a you said you were born in the '60s, so '70s was that generational raise for you. My generational raise was that '90s ballpark, being born in the '80s. But it's those I don't see much difference in the multimedia aspect of things from the '70s to, I would say, to 2001, because it was that there was still the use. I mean, television was more popular, internet was there, but prior to like digital media, there was still the love of owning and caring for things. Where like my son who's 10, like when I'm like, oh, check out this Mad magazine, you're gonna think it's funny. He care less. Or like I'm like, oh, watch The Simpsons, and he'll watch it, but he's so turned into this idea of like quick videos, because that's how kids are raised now, in these
Yeah.
10-minute clips.
Yeah,
That,
I've
like,
got a 12 and a 15-year-old. They're the same. It's all YouTube.
yeah, it kills me, because I used to, like, back when we were younger, if we wanted to watch an episode of something, we had to know that Simpsons are on Thursday 8 o'clock. That's when you watch it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. Boy, that's
And,
my washing machine in the background. Sorry, it's just about to finish the spin cycle.
oh no, listen. I think it makes it intriguing how we could do things like that. We know, right? So did you go to college to be an artist?
I did go to a fine arts college. I kind of left school, and I mucked around for a year or so and did a few jobs, and then I started at a fine arts college, and a lot of the teachers there sort of said to me, you should just leave and get a job, or, you know, do a commercial course or whatever. And that was the direction I headed in. I kind of kept doing sort of factory jobs and bits and pieces and stuff, and eventually worked my way into the art world through working for screen printers and working in their art departments, and yeah, going in that way.
So you were, I mean, your teachers or your educators back then really recognized early on that there's nothing they could really teach you that's going to develop you any more than what skill set you had then. So it's one of those things. It's like, do we stay and hang around and just spend money, or do I just use the skills I have and just go full force at it?
Yeah, it was. I think they saw that I was more interested in, you know, the sort of things we're talking about, rather than pursuing, you know, art and painting and developing those skills. I've got a short attention span, you know. I move on quick from things and stuff. So yeah, I think it was just that they were, you know, I enjoyed doing that sort of thing, and every now and then I do life drawing, and, you know, always imagine that, you know, at some stage you'll probably turn into some old fine artist painter, but time's running out. You better start soon.
Just watching the hands go by.
Yeah.
So you get out of college, you're in the workforce. When did you do your first piece that was recognized in a commercial sense, that was something that you're extremely proud of to this day?
I think it was probably when had probably just left school, and there's a big yacht race here. I live in Sydney, and there's a big yacht race that goes down to Tasmania, which takes 2 or 3 days to sail down there. And it's called the Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race. And a friend of my mum's had something to do with the merchandise back then, and it was early days for merchandise. And he asked me to design a, like a t-shirt print sort of thing, and that was probably the very first job I ever did, and it was very straightforward. It was just the sponsors and a yacht and things like that. But that's the first one I can remember. And then I've always surfed since I was a little kid. I think over the years, a few sort of older guys who had, surfing companies and things would rope you in to do bits and pieces. So I think that probably that sailing one, but I don't really have any clear early thing. I used to draw a lot of t-shirts myself for friends and like do one-off hand painted t-shirts and draw on surfboards and cars and God knows what really. And eventually just sort of like I said, I started working for screen printers at the same time. That was in late teens, early 20s, and at the same time we were seeing a lot of live music and bands, so everything was overlapping and coming together then. And it was really probably music that got me doing more commercial work. On one hand, I had the access to an art department through working for a screen printer and doing these horrible tourist t-shirts, and that gave me, because it was pre-digital, I could get into the dark room and do all my music stuff for all my punk rock friends and stuff, because the owner had to knock on the door before they came in, so you had time to put everything away and get out the stupid stuff you were working on and go, come in, and stuff. So yeah, I think that in that era, that kind of just sort of bubbled over, and I started doing lots of different things.
You mentioned darkroom. So I went to college, and I actually went for photography, and I was in like the last rundown of film photography. Like the last class I took was the last film-based photography class at the school. Like when I said I was done, it was over. Um, I miss those days of like going in and screwing up in a dark room and making sure that your exposures are right and getting everything right so it's all, right. It because it feels more unique because like I mean, I throw things together in Photoshop and it's done quickly and I'm like it just doesn't feel as I don't know, it's different. Like I miss the
Yeah,
days of a dark room.
I know what you're saying. I like the analog world was good, but I do love the digital world a lot more. Probably, I think I was using a bromide machine, so it's funny when there's people that even know what it is. And they're like, well, "Wow, yeah, I know bromide. I used to do bromides, and things like that, and typesetting, and doing layouts. When I pull out old layouts for LP covers from the late 80s or something. God, the amount of work in them and the faith you placed in the printer to just have overlays with, PMS colors and put this here and everything stuck at that down and things there is something that's cool about it, but I do like the immediacy of the digital world. It suits me. I love mocking things up, and it's if anything, it's confusing. You do 10 versions of that, and then like, which one are we going to use? Because they're all finished, sort of thing.
I watched this amazing documentary. A gentleman that worked for Epic Records back in the early '90s
Mm.
showed this album cover of oh God, this is I don't remember what it was an album cover of this whatever album it was back then, and he was showing that they had about 74 hours in the development of putting this album cover together, and he showed like the layers and how they had to get the contrast and the photography over like the hand screen and how they lit all these different things. And he said, "Oh, it
Yeah.
was all these hours." And he goes, "Now I'm going to show you how in 12 minutes I can make this cover better." And in 12 minutes he's online, he's just doing everything. And he goes, "This drives me nuts." He goes, "You kids are
Yeah.
spoiled nowadays."
It's totally that, and I really look back at illustration from commercial illustration, and like guys that were commercial illustrators in Mad Men days, 50s, 60s, and stuff. The level of skill is just unbelievable, and every now and then you come across someone on Instagram who has those skills, but they're not really around these days in
Mhm.
the way that those people are just as draftsmen and drawers and artists and can complete and know how to do things. So from that point of view, definitely something's been lost. But then, I guess, yeah, I guess if I'd have seen back then the sort of how quickly you could do things, you'd probably think, well, you must be a millionaire if you can do work that fast. No, they still work you.
That's the truth. My father-in-law owns a sign company. Like he makes billboards and stuff. He owns a big sign company here in Virginia.
Yeah.
But his great grandfather he started the company, and the way he started was painting the Coca-Cola signs on the side of brick buildings.
Yeah.
And that's where my father learned how to do like hand painting. And within the last couple of years, he's gone to these Coca-Cola plants and hand painted them. And I took pictures of him doing it because it is an art that is gone.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, he's just looking at a picture and he's painting. And I'm like, no stencils, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it is like muralists, people that do mural these days are considered such, artists and things. And then there's those guys that would go out and knock that up in a day, and it was for Coca-Cola or Johnson and Johnson, and move on to the next one.
It's crazy. And I don't know. I've like I said, I'm a big fan of the process when it comes to either musicians, poster artists, photographers, anything. I love how everyone has a different way of doing things, how they come up with a song, how they develop a print, how they develop their art, anything in general, because it's unique to that person. Like, one thing, like my whole house is full of screen prints and art and photography done by many people, because I always see the difference from how different artists interpret things. And I like that. That's what's interesting. So where some person might hate something because it's so different and so ugly, unique, I love it because it's so different and unique.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
when it comes to you in general, there's a print you made that really hit home for me. When I lived in Boston, Massachusetts, this is going back, I was like 17 years ago. I lived in an efficiency apartment and loved it. I mean, I worked 4 jobs going to school, but I had bought a DVD player with the extra money I had 3 movies. I had Evil Dead, I had Empire Records, and I had The Wizard of Oz. I watched those 3 movies about 1,000,000 times a piece. That's only movies I could afford in Boston, Massachusetts. So those 3 movies are the world to me.
Yeah.
Boston's home for me. It means everything. So when I was at the Fenway shows and I saw the print you did in 2018 of The Wicked Witch, I got giddy like a schoolgirl because it was just like this mixture of things. And at that time, I wasn't familiar with your artwork and I wasn't familiar with you. I'm like, what the hell does Fenway Park, the Red Sox, or Pearl Jam have to do with the Wizard of Oz? I'm like, I don't know. Because it's great. And then I learned, and then I'm assuming Australia, Oz, Wizard of Oz, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but
no. It was because I was looking I didn't want to do a direct sort of cheesy Boston reference, and I was looking around at all the history in the area, and Salem wasn't too far away, and the Witches of Salem and all of that sort of jazz was what hooked me up. And then I loved old films as a kid too. I still do. So I reference old films quite a lot in a lot of work, and I still love watching them now. So that's where it came from.
It's beautiful. It's hung up in my movie room. It's right next to I have a Wizard of Oz print, and I have that one framed up. I'll send you a shot later. But it really is a standout in that collection because it was so different. Because a lot of the prints that were Boston-esque from those had themes to do with the city of Boston or the Red Sox. So it definitely stood out. It was crazy, and that's how I learned about you and got to know about your history, because you've worked with, I know you've done some stuff for Eddie Vedder, Queens of Stone Age, the Bob, you did a Bob Weir print too, didn't you?
No, I did. Last year I did I've done those ones. I've done some Blink 182.
Blink 182, yep.
Just looking around my wall here, actually. Did an Ice Cube tour here in 2010. Joan Jett, Pixies. Did a Guns N' Roses for their LA show last year, which was fun. All kinds. A lot of Australian bands, Cosmic Psychos and the Meanies, and Um, yeah, lots. So, I mean, I don't have a good folio on my website, like when you said about the mad stuff. I've done lots of things that I'm sure people would be interested in, but I'm on that constant thing of like, I'm rebuilding my website right now, which has been going for about 15 years. And my Instagram, in recent, when COVID first hit, I actually started doing, I did about 30 pieces. That was a sort of recap of posters that I'd done over the years, because last year too in Sydney at a nice gallery in the sort of cool part of town, they asked me to do, they're normally a rock photography gallery and they represent a lot of good photographers, and they asked me to do a poster show, which was really fun and had about 50 pieces in it, and it was kind of just a retrospective of all those posters. So yeah, I did that. That's on my Instagram feed, not too far back. You can go in and see a lot of those things, but it's a sort of a smidge of all my favorites kind of thing. Yeah.
So, and that's interesting that you say that, because COVID has, in America, it's out of control. It really has, and unfortunately, I don't know when, what's going to fix that. But how did, when COVID hit in Australia? I'm not sure the numbers, the statistics down there. You had said that you kind of went back and started doing things differently.
Yeah.
Being locked indoors with COVID, did that like make you want to like? Was it just giving you more time to like, hey, I gotta just buckle down and kind of restructure a little bit? I mean, how did you handle COVID?
It did, because in the first initial, what's happened in Australia is that initially we were really lucky because we're an island. So they pretty much closed the borders. There was no communal transmission. It was just people returning from overseas, and the government set up, everyone had to quarantine for 2 weeks in hotels and whatnot. So we were very lucky in the first round, but then in the last 6 weeks, 2 months in Victoria, down in Melbourne, they had a bad breakout and Melbourne's been really locked down. So it's a tale of, two cities for Sydney and Melbourne right now. Sydney's got very minimal communal transmission, but Melbourne's really locked down hard. And I've got a lot of artist friends and musicians down there that I feel for right now. But yeah, when it first hit, schools were closed, kids were home. All my work got cancelled. I was doing a lot of stuff at the time. I was working on the Time, actually. I can't remember the name of the show. It was a big one in Florida with Metallica. I've got this thing with Metallica. I did a Metallica poster last year for their Australian tour, and then James Hetfield went into rehab and the whole thing was cancelled after all the poster was completed. And I thought, oh God. And then I was working on this other one where they were headlining in Florida at Daytona, and then that, that COVID came along and that got cancelled and everything. So it's like, oh my God, Metallica, I'll get a Metallica thing out there one day. But, yeah, I think everything got cancelled, and then I slowly got back to normal, and I've been really busy. But in that time when it was quiet, I did start doing some different style works, and it was really good to, because I got kids and stuff, you're just doing commercial work a lot of the time. It was great to just do some work for the hell of it. That was, kind of what I liked, and it was different than stuff I'd done before. So yeah, it was kind of, if there was anything good about it, it was realizing a new sort of direction, and I've still got a lot of half-finished ones working on, but the kind of work's ramped back up, so you do it while you can, because you don't know what's going to happen and what's going to shut down and what's going to keep going. So yeah,
It is. It's weird because since COVID hit, I've talked to quite a few artists, and it's what I've seen is a lot of them have kind of gone back and started pulling things out of history that they maybe not finished, and started doing pieces they've loved, because when it's hard to turn down something like, hey, we're going to pay you to make this print, and you're like, all right, well, I'll push this off to the side for now.
yeah,
But the stuff that's been coming out from some of these artists, and even stuff that they've been like, it's been sitting in my flat file for, I don't know, 7 years, and now I'm going to finish it, and they put it out, and it's amazing. And I'm curious, in the music and the art world in general, I'm curious how, with the times and how they are, how people have the time to make art, or in whether it's like a music form or a print form or however, an expression form of some sort, how they're going to take what's going on in this world and form it to itself. And we're seeing it somewheres where some artists are putting out singles that are, defining the time, especially in the United States, and elsewhere. But it's interesting to see how people are developing around a pandemic that nobody saw coming. I mean, if you would have told me 2 years ago that hey, everyone in the world is going to be home and
Yeah.
toilet paper is going to be really hard to find,
Yeah.
I've been like, really?
Yeah.
Is this where we're going now? This is what we're going to be worrying about?
Totally. Who would have thought toilet paper would be like a deep human instinct?
Oh man, it's crazy. I'm not to get off topic too much. There was a story here in the States because this is, and I'll have to ask you a question about this in a minute. But there's this a guy from Tennessee went up and down the East Coast and bought out toilet paper everywhere, and he stored it in his house and was trying to sell like a roll of toilet paper for like $12 a piece, and then he
Yeah.
got in trouble because he had it. He was setting it up like a commercial setting, and because he didn't have a commercial license, he ended up like getting fined and almost went to jail for it. But it just
Yeah.
shows you like how people are trying to profit off of negativity, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. Let me ask you this question, and feel free to be like, "Hey, I don't want to," and I'm cool with that. How does people in like Australia look at how we in America are handling this situation with the pandemic?
With, I mean, Australia's always been a bit of a reflection in my lifetime, post World War II, very attached to America in a way. And it's kind of scary, to be frank,
Yeah,
to see the way populist politics have gone in the UK and USA. And it's slightly that way here. We have a conservative government right now. Um, I think, yeah, I just think the rise of populism, and personally for me, it's alarming. I've always been into politics, and to see someone like Bush show such disregard for the office that he's in, and a lot of damage is being done that isn't going to turn around quickly. And I'm not putting it all on Trump either. I mean, like it's been drifting that way all around the world and things. So it's a bigger problem than, I don't have any answers or anything. But yeah, it's pretty scary. And I do think that the notion that, my freedom and my rights are everything, you're nothing without community or society. So yeah, I guess that's just how I'd look at it, and hope that I do think that America would be in a better place if the government had more scope to work harder and faster, and as federalism in Australia is probably a bit stronger. Our government can do things in the states. There's only 7 states. There's not 52 or 4 or whatever there are over there. So
we got 50. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's scary, basically, to answer the question. It freaks me out seeing Trump and Boris Johnson and some of the stupid things they do, and then, have to backtrack on it, really, and then paint a different story in the media and on social media and things. So, yeah, I guess we've got a lot of problems, and it's just the way the world's gone. I don't want to sound like I'm some person that's saying, this is all really bad and that's all really wrong. It's been coming for 30 or 40 years. So,
Sure, and it's just being realistic, right?
yeah.
We can't, it is what it is, right? We have to look at what's out there and just be realistic to what's, coming on. Do
Absolutely.
you take what's going on in the world, and does it influence the way that you work as an artist?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think of that lately because when you're younger, and I was say in the mid '80s, got into punk rock and was in bands and used to do crazy handbills and posters that were just so off the air. And I look at them now and think, Jesus, what was going on in your head, And that was really fun. But I don't think things were as serious back then. There was the world. That world was just chugging along then. And there were bad things happening, but nothing like now. I think the world's a bit more serious now. Also, one point of that too that I would mention is that if you do have too much of an opinion, to be called out for it can be really damaging, so I think that's a really sad part of the world too, is the whole sort of cancel culture that exists now as well, is that you got to have feel confident to say, stupid, well, not stupid, but,
Your opinion, yeah, because
yeah, an opinion, and even when it might be satire and you're just taking the piss, because, a lot of these old handbills I was talking about were complete joke and taking the piss on everything that they were about. But if you put that out into the world today, you would have people taking issue with it about, all sorts of things, So I think we've sort of lost something there. And now I've got kids and stuff, I'm probably a bit more, you think more about the world instead of just, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. Let's draw a funny picture about it. You're worried about it.
And I've said it so many times. I feel, and if you've watched the show, every show I've kind of said this. I really feel that the future is bright, where I think that our kids, like, we have kids the same age, that they're looking at the stupid mistakes that are being made across all different parties, all different countries and stuff. And like, why? It's silly. Last night when I was in the studio down here, my son is doing something where he's raising money for breast cancer awareness with him being a goalkeeper in October. So we're recording some stuff, and my daughter got jealous and she's like, "Well, I want to do a show." So I said, "Hell, I'll interview you on the couch in the studio, and we'll put it online." And we were just baloneying, joking off. And at the end, my daughter is only 4 years old. I said, "Do you have any advice to give the world?" And she said, "Yeah, everyone should wear a mask and stay at home." And then I'm like, how the hell does a 4-year-old understand this better than most people?
Yeah.
It's
There's simplicity, it's simple. There's not too much overthinking it. It's just like, that's what they say you should do. You should do it.
exactly. I don't know. It's going to be interesting the way that things go. But let's get back to this. What was your first commercial music print that you did that you got paid for?
Well, like I said, in Sydney. We had a really good underground sort of music scene. Lots of venues, lots of places to play. It was a small scene of like-minded, nutty kids. People love to look back on these times now with rose-coloured glasses on, it was a really funny time. Lots of bands playing. You'd go to a show and you'd have like a hardcore band opening it, a speed metal band playing in the middle, and then a jangly pop band finishing it. It was such a diverse crew that was all hanging around together. So we were all playing shows and hanging out together, and I just started drawing handbills for friends' bands and stuff, and then I ended up in my own band, and we would have posters and things like that. So I guess I would probably get $20 or something and spend it that night at the show or something for some handbills or something that I did. But I think probably the first posters that I got paid for would have been touring bands. I had a friend, Steve Pav, that started touring, and also like Waterfront was the label that we put records out on, and they were licensed to release sub pop stuff. So they had the license out here, so we got a lot of advance tapes of those sorts of bands, and then they started touring here and stuff. So probably would have been like a Mudhoney poster or something like that from a 88 or 89 or something. There was a lot of tours, and Dinosaur Jr. and lots of stuff like that. So I guess they were the first things where you actually got $100, $200 or something like that for drawing up a poster and things. So I can't pinpoint the first thing. It's all just blurs into
Everything just kind of mixes together with muddy water.
Yeah.
Now, back in the late 80s, and this is only assumptions based off of talking to other artists and how things were. Back then, it was more or less, hey, we're coming, just draw up a print. And it wasn't as much creative, like, hey, we want it to be this, this, and this. How much difference has the creative process been for you as an artist from doing prints back in the late 80s, mid 80s to now with bands like the, Pearl Jam, and Blink 182 and things of that nature?
Not too different, to tell the truth. There's surprisingly large things like that. There is not a lot of art direction. There's art direction for Pearl Jam is nothing political. Don't use pink. That's pretty much it.
Don't use pink. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with other bands. I think, obviously I'll do a concept sketch and rough to get it passed before finishing. But the same with, back in the day when they were just touring posters and things. Same process. It was just the promoter out here as opposed to sending it over there to look at. So not too much. I always I will, if people really want me to try and include a reference to the latest LP or the name of the tour or something like that. But generally, I've always liked posters that are just striking images. And if you try too hard to art direct or point something in a direction, it's not going to end up as good, as opposed to just a random idea that's just like, holy shit, that looks rad, and finish that off and turn that into a poster and plonk the band's name on there. There doesn't really have to be any rhyme or reason to what it is, like in the instance of that Pearl Jam poster we were discussing, it's that kind of thing. It was just like I had the vaguest idea that I would include witches because Salem was nearby, and then like you, I always loved the Wizard of Oz, and particularly the Wicked Witch of the West. I thought she was a fantastic character.
Mm-hmm.
She's absolutely iconic. That's another thing with my art that I love using is just super iconic images that people recognize. That poster in particular was hilarious. I got so much feedback from guys going, I can't believe you've done this. It's awesome. It's my favorite band and it's my wife's favorite movie, so I'll get to hang it in the lounge room. So bang, two birds with one stone or whatever.
Then you had some, and you sold that out pretty quickly when you put it up on the site too, if I remember.
It was amazing. It was a really big run. Normally you get about 100 posters from the promoter to sell yourself, and they actually sent me 400, which was insane, and they sold out in like 20 minutes, half an hour.
Holy moly.
Bombarded with people saying that bots bought them all and I was ripped off and your website's broken and stuff.
Listen, this whole week, I don't know how closer you've been following. So Pearl Jam's whole tour got postponed.
Yeah, I've seen them all. Yeah,
yeah, and some of the art that came out from these prints was beautiful. I mean, some unique ones, and I like how they pull from newer artists too.
Yeah.
Which was cool because I like the fact that bands give new artists a chance. These younger guys, the ability to do it, and it was amazing to see it. And what was really crazy was, yeah, just how quickly those sold out.
Yeah, I think Pearl Jam really are responsible in a way, in my mind, for driving the whole poster craze that is on now and that we're in the middle of. I think the poster sort of art really flourished in the late 60s around the San Francisco scene with all Rick Griffin and Victor Moscoso and a lot of guys that I loved growing up because there was a surfing crossover in that too. So I saw a lot of that as a kid in surf magazines. Then I think in the sort of early to mid 90s, guys like Frank Kozik and Coop and those guys sort of bring posters back again. And then I really think it's the culture of collecting that Pearl Jam started by doing them for every show. And this was kind of before revenue had started to fall from CDs and things, where other bands and, dare I say, business models probably look to how we can still make some money because we're not selling a lot of records and stuff. So Pearl Jam kind of preceded that by doing that, and now it's a incredible culture on its own. To be exposed to those collectors is hilarious. It's insane. The response you
We
get from
we are crazy. I will listen. I mean, one of the big key selling points to moving 2 years ago to a bigger house that was double the size of the house we were in was the fact that I would have roughly 1,800 square feet of wall space to put up prints. And I jumped on it. I was like, well, you sold me.
yeah,
Because I mean, I have so many, but the thing about it is, and what I love is, like I'm looking around my room now, and I think in this studio, it's like right on this. You don't see it here. I mean, you could see a little bit. I have like a White Stripes print, and I have a Brian Fox Fenway print, and I have things all around the room. But it's every time I look at one, it brings me back to the memory of that show and seeing the friends that I saw there. Because to me, Pearl Jam, and we're talking about Pearl Jam because you mentioned them being the big art game for Prince. 95% of my friends and everything are because of that band. So like when I go on tour and I follow them for multiple shows and see people, it's like I'm looking at a print from Pearl Jam 20. I met so many great people that day and saw so many friends and got to meet so many people. And it's just like every print has a story to it.
yeah,
And I love doing that. And it's like when I bring people over, like, my kid's on a soccer team, and we'll invite the kid and his parents over and they'll look around and I'm like, yeah, look at that. I went to this show and I went to Montana and, Wisconsin and Canada and this and that. And I'm showing around all these prints and telling them all these stories, and I don't know. Maybe it's me bragging, but I love the ability to have these as like memories more than just like a photo of me at the concert.
totally. It brings back what we were saying about it's the culture of us. It's the art that we have. I mean, some of my favorite painting. I do love painting and stuff, like I said before, and there's people that do. Like some of my favorite painters, like say from the States, would be Mark Ryden. From Australia, there's a guy, Ben Quilty, who's a great painter. But there's no way I can ever buy one of their paintings.
Mm.
I don't even have the house to put it in, but I can get all those posters and I can put them up, and they're my thing. They're what I went to, what I saw, like you said, like I was at the show, I was there, and it's just what I like and what it's my culture sort of thing. Whereas I'd love to be able to drop, a couple of $100,000 on a painting and have a big, hallway to put it up over there and get some special lights for it. But no, I'm just getting a crappy little frame and putting that poster in it and chucking it up over there.
Well, it's funny because I know that you can see it on the one screenshot in the top right corner, the White Stripes print. But so over on my left shoulder I got to see the White Stripes on the last tour of like one of the last 5 shows they did. It was the only time I got a chance to see them, and it took me, about 13 years to find that print, and I spent way too much money on that. I'm not too much that my wife doesn't need to know the true number. And then I spent probably another $200 on framing it with, the right glass, the right frames, and everything.
I do framing properly. I was just saying that.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. Listen, because there's a couple prints where I'll get it, and I'm like, it's a cool print. I went to the show, but do I really want to spend $100 to $200, $300 in framing this? Or maybe I'll just get like a $40 Michaels print and just throw it in, and it will be good to go. But no, it's amazing that a $20 print at a show can bring back so much memories. But in the same sense, too, a $20 print at a show or $30 can be worth $3,000-$4,000 over a course of a year. I've been doing a lot of statistics for an upcoming show in a few months about the poster world for Pearl Jam and how in the late 90s, when they really started doing screen prints and stuff like that, they didn't sell them at shows. They didn't even sell out. They sold a lot of those later on through the 10 Club, and they still sat on them for a while. They just weren't as popular. And it wasn't really until 2005, 2006 tour that the mass appeal with the Brad Clausens and the Ames brothers really revamped their poster world and started selling them, that people got back into it. And then people started overbuying them again, and the poster art went down a little bit with the collectability. And then 2010, it jumped up. And then again, within the last 6 years, it's blown up tremendously. Since I'd say the 2013 tour, it's been a consistent uptick. I mean, how many bands do you know sell prints of shows that were canceled? What's funny that you say that because I actually have that I say this. I have a print up there from a show that was canceled in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2013 that I spent a couple $100s on. That I spent about $400 in framing it. It's like this Egyptian print that's over the top. That I put this over the top. I'll have to send you a picture. It's interesting, but
Yeah.
but the fact that people would go out and spend a ton of money and then they're flipping them for a ton of money on prints of shows that never will happen. But because it's Pearl Jam's attached to it, because these artists are attached to it, because all these things, they're selling like hotcakes. It's just, it's a crazy time, but it also shows that, anything that Pearl Jam puts out there, people will buy.
People love it. I mean, the guys that do the Pearl Jam merch, Chris and Ian, they're genius, and they don't overexploit it. The posters are special. They're double-sided. They got the stamp. It's a real thing. It's like you're 10 years old and you just got some bubblegum cards or something that you were never going to get. So it's got that whole feel to it. I think it's a feel-good, cool thing, and it's not, like I said, it's not exploitative at its source. Mm-hmm. Later on, people start paying money for it, which is fine by me. I've still got a few in my drawers that I'll get out, here and there. But yeah, it's just a really cool thing, and then it does lead on to other bands. Again, like I said, it's unfortunate for them, but it's a good revenue stream. So it's a good way to sort of make some money where, I was just reading the other day about Fleetwood Mac and the sort of money they used to make from records in the 70s. It's like, my God, I suppose if they were around now doing those sorts of numbers, they'd probably be getting a shitload from streaming services as well. I don't know. But, if you're a mid-range band or a small band, that's all gone, So
it is, but it's interesting because they were talking about it was Metallica. They were saying that Ride the Lightning, Metallica made so much money off that album and Black, those two albums, that they could have stopped right then and they could have all lived in perpetuity of just them riding off the success of those albums. That's how much that's.
Yeah.
They said their last two albums didn't even break enough. They just broke enough to cover the cost of making the albums, and that they'll get. They were on Howard Stern recently, and they were saying they get pennies for streaming. Like their money they make now is from touring and like commercial things and stuff, and the merchandise and stuff. That's where they make the money, and because they were saying that they feel bad for bands that are not touring right now because they're not making anything. It's hard to sell.
Yeah, and especially for even younger bands too. If you're 20 years old and this is where I really feel sorry for a lot of bands I work with here at home, that they tour so much harder than we did when we were kids. We used to, go to the other states, other cities. Most punk bands I know from Australia now do tours of Indonesia, Europe, the States. Wow. They are non-stop, and they work so hard, and they go through loads of merch, have huge followings, and it's a real time in their life, and it's just been cut. It's like, apart from, bummer you're not making a living or whatever like that, the real thing is that it's like, you're losing a big chunk of that time of your life, which is, a real bummer.
Well, it's, what's sad now is with streaming being the capital king, right? Like they're the ones, because listen, I am as much of a victim of it as having the ability to say, oh, you know what, today I want to listen to Dark Side of the Moon. And I just have to click a button and go. And there is times that I like to pull the vinyl out and listen to the album because I believe it's a piece of art. It should be listened from front to back. But like, recently there was the owner of Spotify came out and said, he's like, musicians complaining they're not making enough money, but they're only putting out an album every 3 to 4 years. How do you think you can survive off that? And it's like, where do you come off on telling someone how to create something?
I only made 50 million last quarter.
Yeah, exactly. I need 7 yachts, not one. Start putting more music out. I mean, oh God.
Yeah, it is the one. Well, I have a lot of friends that are sort of, as if it's a real problem. It's just what's happened,
Yeah.
and like I don't even have a stylus on the turntable. I have my speakers are gone. I haven't played a record in 10 years. I just stream stuff, and it is, again, like I was saying earlier about the ease of creating art in a digital world is the same with music. When I was young, I used to play records and sit there drawing. You have to get up every 20 or 30 minutes and go and flip it over and stuff. It was a real hassle. Now I can just put it on, let it go all day. Listen to something that like with me, you might mention a band, and I'll go and listen to their whole back catalogue and stuff. So in that sense, it's good. I perfectly understand that it's terrible for bands, but it's the same with the visual art. It doesn't bother me. I've seen my art being sold on this gigantic Chinese buy online thing where they put, it's called Alibaba, and they'll put your art on T-shirts and things like that. And there's nothing I can do, but I don't care. If you get upset about shit like that, it's too much of a stress. You just let it go. Most people that you'll send something to and say, that's my art, they didn't know, because a lot of people do it.
Mm-hmm.
And sites like that, like Redbubble or whoever, in the West, they'll take it down if there's a copyright infringement. They don't want any part of it. But this Alibaba, you have to pay money to join them before you can have a hope of even speaking to anyone. It's like,
they want your money for you to tell them to stop selling, so they stop taking money from you. They're just trying to find even more money.
I mean, it's in China, and it's like I'm sure they're going to give a shit. So
yeah, they're just going to play dumb.
I don't care about that sort of thing. I mean, like I said, it's the modern world we live in and stuff. And to go back to what you were saying too, like I do feel good when I hear people say, I'm the future's bright and I'm hopeful for it and stuff like that. I love hearing, scientists and really brainy people say, no, we're living in the greatest time there's ever been, and it's only going to get better. You just got to step back and have a look at everything and go, yeah, they're probably right, actually. We can find all these things that aren't working for us, or somehow it was better before, but, I think it's just the world ticks on, and we just got to run with it.
Well, unfortunately, we live in a time where negativity sells, and that's what's always going to be on the top of everything, whether it's on your social media stream, online, and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that's just how it is.
Yeah. It's journalism too. I mean, to go back to what we were saying, I had some journalists talking the other day about, like the rise of all the populist sort of politics is on the back of journalism, because journalists always want to have that gotcha moment or something, like they're chasing that ambulance nonstop, and you can't blame them. It's what they were taught to do and stuff. It's just the way things work, and things will evolve and change, and hopefully when it gets really bad, it'll start to turn around and get a bit better.
I said, just got to hope that our kids are smarter than us, and they just, they learn from our stupidity. That's all. That's the only I can say. But so you have mentioned numerous times you were in a band when you were younger. I am thoroughly fascinated, because it always happens. What was your first band's name?
The Hellmen, we were called, because at the time we were all surfers, and guys that were surfing huge waves and doing really stupid things. It was like, wow, that man's a hellman. And plus you come up with the name off the back of we came up with it. We were sort of like, I think the band that was originally jamming was called The Fourth Degree. I can't remember why it was The Fourth Degree. Then it turned into The Hellmen, and then that kind of took off, and we got signed and put out some records and stuff. And within about 6, yeah, we were around at the right time. We were playing in Sydney, in Australia. There was bands like Radio Birdman and The Scientists, which guys like Mark Arm will reference. They knew about them, and there was a great underground scene, and it really does reflect the West Coast when I speak to people. I know Jimbo Phillips, the artist, and he was in bands, surfed, did exactly all the same things we did when we were kids, just on opposite sides of the Pacific. And the Seattle thing was the same. So yeah, we just were playing a real mix of hardcore punk and sort of the hard rock and stuff, and it was just leading itself into that. whole kind of grunge thing in sort of like 86, 87 we were playing. And so we got signed straight away after like the second show we played by Waterfront, the guys I was saying, because they were releasing a lot of that sort of music, and we just said, as soon as you guys are ready to make a record, we'll put it out for you. So
Wow.
we were really lucky in that respect, and then we just rode that wave as it sort of went. So we had a really good time. But with the name The Hellmen, you know, you would turn up to play shows and it would just be written Hellman and all these things. We're like, God, we really should have thought of something like Sonic Youth or something, shouldn't we? It sounds a lot cooler than Hellman. And it was always felt really sort of misogynistic to us, and we were the total opposite of that, you know. So it was just, yeah, it was a funny thing. Yeah.
You know, I was in bands when I was younger too, and that's how I ended up here in Virginia, being in a band. But I always I always think your first band name always is overthought. Like you always overthink it or underthink it. Like it's never. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, we'll be the Ketchup Bloodsuckers. Like that's a clever name. People are gonna love us. Or it's gonna be like, yeah, we'll just be like the white band. I don't know. We'll just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Like you know, so, you know, it's always silly things. But I don't know. I always think like that. Your first band name kind of sets you off in the right direction.
Yeah, it does. Well, some other guys that I did all their artwork for most of the time that were a really influential hardcore band down here, and they called themselves Mass Appeal, and it was just such a great name, and it still sounds really good. Yeah,
It rolls off the tongue real well.
yeah, and they were the exact opposite. They were really stinging, jarring, loud band. They were quite early, and we were like, again, we were really lucky. We had all our tracks on Thrasher tapes that they'd put out, and that was through those guys. And I think back in those days, that was Brett, that was in Mass Appeal, was a real punk kid of that era that wrote a lot of letters and a lot of things. So I got my art in Pus Zone, in Thrasher back then, and then we got some tracks on those records and things like that. So it was just more of a network in those days, I think, and connections with, you know, labels around the world would sort of release each other's things here and there and stuff. So, you know, we had releases in Europe, and we should have gone to Europe and tour. We were just a very lazy bunch of kids. All our friends did. And it was like, you know, a great holiday through Europe that everyone would, you know, pay for everything for you. You'd see everything. But, you know, we'd had trouble driving 2 hours to the next town. It's like, really? Have we got to go there tonight? Oh, man.
Oh man, that is crazy. Let me ask you this. With looking at your collection of art you've created up to this point, first of all, I also want to say I keep looking over and I see that piece you've done over your shoulder, which you post online, of the gentleman. It is stunning.
It's my Captain Beefheart. For a friend who's I was saying to you before, he makes surfboards, and he asked me. He said, you know, let's do a swap for a board for a piece of art, and he loved Captain Beefheart. So that was kind of a COVID thing too. I bought a whole bunch of canvases to paint. So as soon as he said that, I was like, I've got some canvases. They're all sitting there. So I just knocked that one up for him. And I like Captain Beefheart because he's I was a singer in our band, and I wasn't, you know, a terribly gifted singer, and I like art. So I can see with Don Van Vliet and myself, we have things in common. He's probably a little bit more creative than
me. That's awesome. So looking over your body of work you've done up to this point, is there a piece that you have done that if someone was to say this represents you, Ben, what piece do you think you've created up to this point that is your envision of what your art really stands for?
Wow, that's a big question.
Listen, I try to ask big and important questions. I can't promise you that I'm professional by any means, or that I know what I'm talking about, or you can even pronunciate words properly, but I try my best.
Yeah. I couldn't say. To represent myself, most of it. I love drawing skulls. A lot of my work has skulls. Like even in that Pearl Jam poster we were talking about, I had to turn her bats, you know, flying monkeys into skulls and skeletons because I just love skulls and skeletons. just growing up through skateboard culture and punk rock culture and things like that. So normally things with skulls on them, I suppose, which most of my work has. Surfing and things again too, but
Well, I mean,
yeah,
because
I couldn't say.
because even your two prints we did quite a few prints for Pearl Jam when they were in Australia. You had the two that the surfers.
Yeah,
The one was Sydney and one was
I think I did the one for Sydney. That was a surfer. I did a Clockwork Orange
the
one
Clockwork
for
Orange one. That was
Perth,
good. Yeah.
and oh yeah, the surfing one for Brisbane. Yeah, that got printed wrong. Something happened with that. So the actual poster itself has a really thick sort of blurred line, which I think was a digital screw up from going from the to the bromide to the screen. Something happened where the black line got thicker, which I guess people probably wouldn't notice, but I do, you know. But that's an Ed Roth reference, yeah. So again, surfing and again that sort of lowbrow custom culture from California with the surfing crossovers always influenced me, because there's, you know, similar in Australia with there's been some. There was a comic in a magazine here called Captain Good Vibes. That was a surfing comic, which really still hasn't been around for 20 or 30 years, but still has a huge influence in the same way Roth might over there. So yeah, just always would include surfing and skulls.
No, it's. I'm looking at it now. I was trying to see if I can capture what you were talking. I can't see it. Um, gosh, but it's that's also, you know, that those prints are from 11 years ago. So
Yeah.
technology has changed drastically in the last 11 years when it comes into the culture of art. So that's interesting how things have changed. But I don't know. Well, listen, Ben, I think we're at a point. We've said it all, or said enough, right? I think
Yeah.
I've captured your ear long enough. Listen, I thank you so much for your time. I really say this, your your art is tremendous. I really inspired by the feel of it. The Clockwork Orange reference, I totally forgot about that print. And then now I'm looking at it. That was something that I remember in 2009 seeing it and was like, damn, this is just so unique, and it captured. And the skate punk, the skateboarding, the surfing scene, everything about it. And like I said, that Wizard of Oz print from the Pearl Jam series from Boston was something that, you know, tied in so much for me. It was like, it was weird. It's almost like I was on like the damn Truman Show, and I'm like, this is kind of like they know what the fuck they're doing, because this is a mixture of everything for me. It's kind of
No, for
weird.
you, Anthony. We haven't
Uh,
overstepped it, have we? You don't realise what's going on.
oh man, it is crazy.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. Thanks.
No, Ben, listen, I really appreciate your time. Also, it's still weird to me to think that you're a day ahead of me. So I'm hoping that the was it you be the 21st, the 20th is a better day than the 19th, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, man, I really appreciate it. Now, do you have anything up for sale right now that people can go to? Because they can go to your website, which is
It's my website is www.benbrown, or one word, benbrown.com.au. You've got to put the .au on the end of the .com. And my Instagram, which is probably a safer bet, because if I'm going to put things up, is Mental Ben, MENTALBEN. So it's just at Mental Ben. And I probably will, after chatting to you. I do have a couple of those Boston posters and some Queens of the Stone Age and things that have sold out. And
oh.
I might put some of them out in the next couple of days. So get on the Instagram and give me a follow. And then
Whoa, look at this breaking news. If you missed out on some prints that might have been sold out, including the Pearl Jam Witch one, right? Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
There's a very good chance that you could potentially buy one. So
Yes.
get on the Instagram, give them a like. And I also just want to give a quick shout out, Ben, before we hang up on you. There is a gentleman in the community. His name's Dan. Unfortunately, he's battling cancer. It came back. He's in remission. And the community is doing a fundraiser right now to raise money to help offset his medical expenses and everything that's going through. So if you get a chance, I was just messaged to kind of put this out there. Look up Footsteps in the Sand on Facebook, and there is a benefit where they're doing a raffle of different prints and stuff, and some odds and ends, Pearl Jam related, other bands related that you can purchase to help offset his medical expenses. So definitely check that out. Footsteps in the Sand. And there's some other great things going on with the Run for EB going on. That is, you can check out. You can go to Cause the Wave on Facebook. They're raising money right now for a 5K. So there's a lot of great things going on out there. I would definitely check that out. Ben, man, I can't thank you enough. I've been excited about this for the last couple of days. It's been a good one. Ben, until next time, as I like to say in all my shows, if you're not tuning in, you've tuned out. The next episode, we're going to have Bailey Race on. That's going to be in 2 weeks. Next week is going to be the first episode of a new show that's coming out. Check out the Touring Fan Live on Facebook. That's coming out. And then another new show's coming out next Friday. So much new content, so much fun stuff. Thank you for tuning into Touring Fan Live. I'm Anthony Krzyzewicz. That's the talented Ben Brown. Thanks for tuning in.